Today is Monday, February 9th, 2026, and this is Issues and Answers on the WCEG Digital Media Enterprises Network, and I am Norman A. Carter Jr. Welcome, America, and welcome all the inhabitants of this wonderful blue planet to this installment of Issues and Answers. We are the worldwide community group, and we don't just talk about things going on in our broadcast right here in our home of Georgia, but also in the United States, and also concerns that affect this country and this world. We're going to have a lot of info today, covering a lot of subjects. Just remember, we are all part of the one. We are all citizens of Earth and created in the image of God. We are all guardians of his creations. Let's try to live that way. Whether you're in France, Russia, Guam, or Canada, the Virgin Islands, or Philadelphia, PA, we welcome you to the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. Now, in the event that you just stumbled on us by accident and wonder, well, how the heck did I get here? And this program is so good. I want to get back. I want to hear it again. Here's how you do that. You can tune into WCEG talkradio.com, WCEG talkradio.com on your computer or mobile device. Click the icon that says live, and you'll be right there with us. Just look for Issues and Answers, 4 o'clock on Mondays. You can watch us live on your smart TV. Access the WCEG channel on your LinkedIn, Roku, YouTube, Fanbase, Blue Sky, Twitch, or any other popular streaming service. You can watch us live on Facebook, and I like it when you watch us live on Facebook because you can text in questions and comments if you watch us live on Facebook just by becoming a friend of WCEG Media Enterprises or WCEG Radio, Talk Radio. You can watch us live on LinkedIn, and as I said, all other social media platforms. If you missed the live broadcast, which many of you do because you're working, you're involved in so many other things, you can always catch us on YouTube at any time after the airing of our live broadcast. I usually post it on my personal site, but also the station posts it on YouTube and all the other media outlets that I spoke of earlier. If you have Alexa, just say, Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio, and you'll be able to hear us. We're out there. You can download our free WCEG mobile app. You can listen to us on any of our 12 podcast distribution platforms. And please understand that the topics and opinions are mine. And I'm telling you, reminder, they're mine and not the station, not the management. So please don't call up my boss and said, why that man say that? These are all my thoughts, my words, and I'll take the weight. Got broad shoulders here. I think I can handle it. So let's get it on. Let's talk about what's happening. Now, firstly, I want to thank all of you who have responded via text, email, or social media to our last installment of Issues and Answers. It was surprising to me. The best comment I heard via Facebook was the program was educational. I actually heard that a couple of times. And for me, that's great. We talked about our government, voting, history, and the dangers of apathy. And like the 1960s in America, this is no time to be silent. This is no time to be ashamed of who you are or where you came from. Now, personally, I have been verbally smacked for standing up for African American pride. Those who are extremely sensitive call this partisan politics. That's wrong. If anyone of any political party disparages my race, by referring to it publicly as less than human, I will not be silent. Did you hear that? I will not be silent, and neither should you. But some of you are so spineless that you allow others to absorb those slings and arrows of ignorance while you stand in the background and reap the rewards. So let's be clear. Being outspoken, as I have been since I was 19 years old, can be a lonely experience. Many times I have heard words similar to, man, you shouldn't have said that. I agree with you, but we can't talk about that. End quote. Words such as those had followed me my entire life. 2 years ago, after I was elected to a leadership position in my city, a person condemned me for being too political and using big words. Can you believe that? Using big words. No one is impressed by your big words, she wrote. My response was that I took going to school seriously and I embraced the English language as best I could because, as one former co-worker stated, English is the language of money. That person's expectation was that my grasp of English should not surpass that of a sixth grader. So much for me. So much for me. Let's get busy. Now, how many millions of dollars are being spent on a vindictive pursuit by a petulant president who cannot tolerate the fact that he is not all that to all people? The confiscation of hundreds of thousands of voting records from Fulton County, Georgia, is a travesty of justice and is a warning that the coming November elections may be compromised or even abandoned by this wannabe dictator. There will be more about that on future programs. Now, I expect that many of you are expecting issues and answers to immediately jump into a conversation about Black history in Black History Month by this Black man. On nearly every program, I delve into a little snippet of Black history as it relates to the events of the day. At least I try to. Black history is American history. Recent news and my experiences in my section of Georgia indicates to me that far too many of you slept through history classes in school. There is an old saying which goes, those who ignore history are condemned to repeat it. End quote. Today, we are living at a time which will not only become part of Black history in America, but will also undeniably be a part of mainstream American history, unless you become a victim of the rewrite. Current events are being rewritten nearly every day. Hear that? Current events are being rewritten nearly every day. Haitians eating pets, drug dealers walking 1,200 miles through Mexico to sell drugs here, Venezuelans boating their way to America to deliver cocaine, Somalian immigrants bilking the government out of billions of dollars. And there is so much more. But as Kellyanne Conway, former press secretary of President Donald Trump, candidly told us, we are living in a time of alternative facts. That oxymoronic statement is the philosophical base of the Make America Great Again movement. alternative facts. Now, some of you who were following me on Facebook know that I put a lot of stuff out about this program, about other things too. But I mentioned the name Mephistopheles. And some of you may not be familiar with the story of Dr. Faust and who Mephistopheles is. So before I move on, let me explain Mephistopheles. First, let me start with the devil, also known as Satan or Lucifer. And he is understood to be the chief adversary of God. He is the leader of the fallen angels and the chief source of evil and temptation. The devil is the ruler of hell and is the prince of evil spirits. In the Christian tradition, the devil is a creation who was subject to the divine will and who misused the divine nature. Now, Mephistopheles is seen as hell's messenger, making him the servant of the devil. In the Faust legend, he plays the role of trickster, liar, cheater, and negotiator, making deals for souls, although he can also be intelligent, ironic, and charming. Mephistopheles can shapeshift into any animal, person, knight, etc., through magic and illusion. He is the opponent of beauty and freedom, and he causes the death of the individuals and works to ruin lives. He causes the death of the individuals and works to ruin lives. I want you to hold on to these thoughts that I just said because they're relevant to where we're going in this broadcast, in this portion. And you're going to hear Mephistopheles or Mephistophelian a few times in this broadcast. Now, today we begin with what I will call nearly current and current events and how they relate to Black history. I encourage all to text in your questions and comments to via Facebook so that I can hear your thoughts, hear your questions. Uh, you can view or text in at any time, and I will respond to all questions and comments as best I can. Let's start with this statement that I'm sure some of you will object to. Donald Trump is not the issue. Stop blaming him for all that is wrong with America. One man, no matter how callous, ignorant, and arrogant, can hurt millions of people with an utterance or a doctrine. Hold on to that thought. Donald Trump would fling into impotent detumescence were he not being blown up by millions of anti-Semites, racists, and fascists wrapping themselves in American flags while carrying Bibles, sometimes upside down. But anyway, carrying those Bibles. Now, Hitler alone, Duarte alone, Putin alone, Genghis Khan alone, Andrew Jackson alone could not do what they do without the powerful support of others who were anxious to spread their predilection for hatred, violence, and suppressive dominance. All of them came with a Mephistophelian aide de camp. Hitler had Martin Bormann. Putin has Nikolai Patrushev. Donald Trump has Stephen Miller. The list goes on and on. Yet the staying power comes from the morally handicapped looking for the identity they could never find within themselves, but can find it by becoming allegiance of a tyrant. It is they who become the issue. It is they who carry out the assassinations of characters, suppressive violence, and politically expedient murders that can lead to attempts at genocide. They are not hard to find. In Germany, they proudly wore swastikas. In America, they proudly wave Confederate flags, wear MAGA hats, or display Trumpy bears in their living rooms. They are a brainwashed and dangerous lot. Most, like the evangelicals, swear allegiance to the God of Abraham, but rejoice in the behaviors such as David sending Uriah to be the point man in a battle. They believe in God's son, but refuse to call him by Father God's ordained name because it sounds too Jewish. No one spoke English in ancient Israel. We call Buddha by his name. We call Muhammad by his name. But that other guy, that's a no-no. Too Jewish. But Acts 4:12 declares, there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. No one spoke English then. No one spoke Latin. You don't translate names because names are important, unless you're Christian. I move on. On Christmas Day, President Donald Trump ordered the bombing of certain sections of Nigeria because of allegations of, quote, Christian genocide, end quote. Strangely, this country, America, which has missiles and bombs that can strike targets with pinpoint accuracy, bombed areas that had nothing to do with attacks on Christians. The underlying belief is that, just as with Venezuela, this attack was all about attaining access to this country's large oil supply. It was an attack on what Donald Trump has publicly called and dubbed an S-hole country. You fill in the blank. He attaches that S moniker to any American city or state that has an African American mayor or governor. Have you forgotten how this deranged president of the United States blamed the African American governor Westmore? Westmore is? This is Westmore. That Westmore, as a book called The Other Westmore. He blamed Governor Westmore of the state of Maryland when a disabled ship crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, Maryland. His MAGA suck-ups, that's who they are, found nothing wrong with this erroneous conclusion that emanated from the mind of a documented racist. In 2019, Donald Trump never tired of criticizing the late Maryland Congressman Elijah Cummings. Do you remember him? Trump called Baltimore dirty and rat infested. Last year, he called Somali immigrants garbage. During his second campaign for the presidency, this is all going to make sense. During his second campaign for the presidency, that's Trump, J.T. Vance, his vice presidential running mate, made national headlines by stating as truth a proven lie by Springfield, Ohio resident Erica Lee. May she ever forever live in shame, Erica Lee. She stated on Facebook that Haitian immigrants in her town were stealing and eating pets. It was a lie, but Vance campaigned for weeks on that lie. Then Vance admitted that both he and Trump will continue to lie if those lies arouse media attention. You get that? It's called the pragmatic lie. They will tell you bold-faced lies if it gets you to listen to whatever they want to say. These are the leaders of the largest company in the country in the free world. Think about that. And some of you happily voted for him. The problem is non-critical thinking MAGA folks believe those lies even after being told that they are lies. Repeating that, the problem is non-critical thinking MAGA folks believe those lies even after being told they are lies. Is that ridiculous? That's MAGA, locked in ignorance and refusing to accept truth through knowledge. The grand old party, also known as the Republican Party, the GOP, is no longer the party of Lincoln or the party of Frederick Douglass or even the party of Ronald Reagan. It is the emasculated party of Trump. It's intolerant, it's vindictive, and it's, by its very name, is regressive. And not regressive to a great time, but to the isolationist, anti-Semitic, and racist movement called America First in pre-World War II America. I implore you folks to read your darn history books. You can look this stuff up online. Look up America First, pre-World War II. Charles Lindbergh was the head of that movement, one of the heads of that movement. Not a good place for America, not a good group. And because of that, America First movement, when you really look at it, thousands of people died. I don't want to get into that because too deeply, because it takes me to another plane. But America First, not a good movement. But that's your MAGA folks, because that's what they talk about. That's your new policy today. They talk about America First, and America First reverts back to that. You know, just like the red caps that they wear, that reverts back to the red shirts that people wore in North Carolina when they terrorized Black people for trying to vote. That's what that red means. This, these people aren't subtle. They're boldly telling you who and what they are. Why do you continue to ignore them or try to put them in a better light? They are who they are. That party is repeating those same behaviors that existed in the 1940s. Is that what you really want? Let's talk about the MAGA police. We talked about them last week. During our last program, I compared the Trumpian version of ICE with World War II's Nazi Gestapo. Both worked outside the law. Both were directly responsible to the country's leader, that is, the president or the Fuhrer, also known as the chancellor. Now, today, this very day, today, there is a battle in Congress to get the immigration and customs enforcement agents to work within the same guidelines as other law enforcement agencies. Even after the murders of two people caught on video, there is pushback because the President of the United States wants no restrictions on these agents. Remember Vice President Vance, who promoted the lie about Haitian immigrants eating pets? He stated these agents have absolute immunity. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It's what he meant. He tried to clean it up later, but that's what he meant because that's what the president wants. They don't want accountability. They want to terrorize, to victimize, and dominate. Now, Republicans, and this is not partisan, it's fact, are fighting to keep ICE agents from wearing body cameras, from removing their masks, and following the use of force guidelines adapted as best practices by every police department in this country. Now, let me just go back to this removing of masks. There was a congressman yesterday on television, and I've heard this from Vance, Vice President Vance, and others, that the ICE agents don't want to remove their mask because they have received threats from the public. And you know what? People suck that up. They say, oh, yeah, how about that? Okay, let me explain something to you. If you're wearing masks, how does anybody know who you are? So the whole thing about these ICE agents getting threats is false. It's a lie, but it sounds good. It tickles the ear of some people. And say, oh, that sounds good. Oh, yeah, makes sense. No, it does not. Every police officer in this country operates without a mask. All of them. All of them. What makes ICE so different? What makes ICE different is people observe your Gestapo tactics. People observe you shooting and killing unarmed people. And yes, there is public resentment. And there is the cry for public accountability. But our president, our vice president, and our entire Justice Department wants to hide that. Awful. And some of you will still vote to support this president. Now, conveniently, for most of the tyrannical forces in our legislatures, the public has forgotten that ICE agents have a quota system in place, ordered by the President of the United States. Investigations and reporting have described explicit numeric targets. Press accounts cited a directive for ICE field officers. You got one there in College Park, Georgia, and they're trying to build one out here in Newton County, Georgia. Press accounts cited a directive for ICE field officers to aim for roughly 75 arrests per office per day. 75 arrests per office per day. That means about 1,800 to 2,000 arrests per day nationally. And there are other reports that White House officials said asked for as many as 3,000 arrests per day. Now, this is why you see ICE aggressively arresting even innocent people. It's a numbers game. And why is that dangerous? I'm going to give you some examples from my personal experience of why this is dangerous. You Black history folks need to pay attention. Because some of this really makes me angry because most Black folks, most Black journalists ignore this. Most leaders in Black cities, that cities with Black leaders and non-Black leaders, they ignore this. But this was a fact. Now, if you read my book, these stories are familiar. During my first year in the police department, every police district had a quota for everything, for tickets, uh, and for traffic tickets, for car and pedestrian stops, and for vice arrests. Now, these vice arrests were normally dubbed as victimless crimes, such as illegal liquor sales, use and sale of narcotics, illegal lottery, and prostitution. Uniformed officers making such arrests were usually rewarded with a day off with pay, but unrecorded on any documentation. There were officers who would try to get a minimum of one vice arrest per month to find favor with their sergeant and get a day off that was off the books. That became the foundation for many false arrests. And hey, guess who were the victims of those false arrests? Black folks. Black folks. So here we are. Uh, One night I was working with an officer who pointed out a middle-aged black man. This is in my book. Man was about 50 years old. He'd just gotten off a bus and appeared to be walking home. This officer said to me, a rookie officer, "There goes our vice pinch for the month." I said, "Where?" He pointed to the man I just described. "What has he done?" I asked. "Look, we just lock him up, put some numbers and prices on a piece of paper, and say that we observed him illegally writing numbers." I was appalled. I refused. I gave him a lecture how in my neighborhood where I grew up, I knew of many such instances when innocent people were arrested, and I vowed never to do that to anyone. And that was one of the reasons I decided to become a police officer, because I wanted to do my part to end that type of crap in the neighborhoods where I lived and where I worked. That officer never worked with me again. He spread the word. And in fact, other officers would not work with me. I had no problem with that. Now, the next incident, which is insidious, occurred many years later. This is in my book. This was heartbreaking, folks. This is heartbreaking. I worked in the operations room in the 12th Police District in Southwest Philadelphia. The operations room is the district headquarters. Most minor or misdemeanor arrests were first processed there. I noticed that highway patrol officers, and some of them are friends, they hate this, they're going to hate this, were regularly coming into the district to process intoxicated driver arrest. There evolved a pattern. All the men arrested were African American. All the men were middle aged. All the arrests took place within 2 or 3 blocks of a neighborhood bar. Worst yet, none appeared to be intoxicated. And what I learned was that Mothers Against Drunk Driving, known as MADD, M-A-D-D, had initiated a challenge to the Philadelphia Police Department to make more arrests for drunken drivers. The Philadelphia Highway Patrol took up the challenge and awarded each officer 1 half day off for each intoxicated driver they arrested. Now, what brought this to light for me after making all these observations was a middle-aged African American man who had been arrested for standing there in front of me. And he said to me, "Look, officer, I have not had a drink at all. I went to the bar. I got a 6 pack of beer for my wife and I. I was on my way back home so we could have some beer and watch television." The man was telling the truth. You could look at him and he was telling the truth. I became angry. Now, there are officers, black officers, who will stand there and look at people like that and do nothing and say, hey, you know what? Bad luck for you. I'm part of this group. Sorry. I hear what you're saying. Too bad. It wasn't me, and it's not me today. I immediately turned to my supervisor and told him, there's a problem. See what these guys, see, Philadelphia had a different process now that you have maybe here in Georgia and other cities, because all drivers who were arrested for intoxicated drivers, they were first processed and booked in the district of occurrence, which is where I was, but they were transported to the police administration building where they would be tested. And that might be hours later, but it wouldn't be there. And at that point, the officer making the breathalyzer test would make a determination as to whether this person should be held for court or released. I'm telling you, all these people were released. But that didn't matter, because what mattered is the numbers, just like ICE. The numbers mattered. They put in the people, bringing them in, putting them on the books, getting them processed, getting them out, going to court, and legitimate arrest didn't matter. It was the numbers. It was the quota. Both I and my corporal ended the practice by refusing to sign the required paperwork. Now, there were several heated arguments, but I threatened to get declination to prosecute paperwork from the police administration building. That ended that fiasco. That ended that. And this is in my book. Now, ICE is currently under that same type of policy. It does not matter how many defendants are freed because they were erroneously arrested. What matters are the numbers. Remember, these ICE agents were rewarded a $50,000 bonus. They are grateful as hell. Their integrity has been bought. The President of the United States, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, and the Director of Homeland Security are the Mephistophelian entities who have allowed them to barter their souls to the devil. That's your government. Yesterday it was Haitians. Today it's Latin Americans. Tomorrow it may be you. Yes, you. Do I have to read First They Came again? This president and his lackeys do not care about courts, laws, or your personal feelings. Remember, this president never placed his hand on the Bible when he swore to uphold the U.S. Constitution. We talked about that during my last program. There is video evidence online if you look for it. Maybe I'll repost it again, but it's out there. Just go search YouTube, search for yourself. If I put it out there, you say, "Oh, he probably doctored that." No, I got better things to do with my life than to doctor stuff for a man that throws so much stuff out there for you. You don't have to doctor anything. You don't. He's a racist. He's a tyrant. Okay, so let's get to where this is leading. In 1973, Donald Trump and his father were successfully sued for housing discrimination. In predominantly white apartment housing, applicants who were black had a C for colored marked on their application and were always denied. In 1989, as New York City was reeling from the Central Park 5 case in which a woman in Central Park was raped and beaten, Donald Trump took out an ad calling for the reimposition of the state's death penalty. There was no death penalty then. Death penalty is for capital offenses like murder. Nobody was murdered. All the accused were African American. 2 decades later, those 5 men were exonerated based on DNA evidence. Now, remember, Trump took out a full page ad calling for these black men to be executed. A full page ad. And despite these men being exonerated, Trump since then, on at least 5 occasions, has expressed that he continues to believe the original verdict that the men were guilty and that the settlement made by the city was a mistake. In 2011, Trump falsely claimed that presidential candidate Barack Obama was not American born. He persisted in that lie for years. In 2024, he alleged that presidential candidate Kamala Harris was not African American. Again, that was false. In 2025, he called all Somalian immigrants garbage. That was in 2026. Time flies. But he called all Somalian immigrants garbage. At 11:45 p.m. Friday, January 6, 2026, he posted on his Truth Social page pictures of former President Barack Obama and his wife in ape costumes. 12 hours after condemnation by Republicans as well as Democrats, he removed the post. He stated he had no knowledge about the post and that it was done by an unknown staffer. He refused to apologize for it and stated it was not a mistake. Listen to me. He stated that post of Mr. and Mrs. Barack Obama in ape costumes was not a mistake. So he meant it. And there you have it, caught in the act, incapable of being denied. This was not a slip of the tongue. It was an opening of his warped mind. We have a racist president who has put his innermost thoughts into public domain. An apology is meaningless. So please stop asking for an apology. He did what he meant to do. He said what he meant to say. How appropriate it is this well-known poem by Omar Khayyam. We try to read it for you. The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on. Nor all thy piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel one half a lie, nor all your tears wash out a word of it. Think about that. The moving finger writes, and having written, then moves on. Nor all your piety nor all your wit will cancel one word. Now, before all of you get so outraged, let me say something that many of you would say, well, you can't say that. You can't talk about that. So here I go again. I hear the outrage of many of you. I hear you. I am outraged. But if you're going around, if you are African American and you're going around calling people you don't like by the N word, or you're calling your women bitches and hoes, you have no reason to be outraged because you're just as bad as Trump. You're just as bad. So, those of you who think using those words, those dehumanizing words, are okay, remember you're in the same basket as this guy who thinks we're all apes. Okay? So temper your outrage, some of you. Temper your outrage. I promised to talk about the South Fulton Police Department because this is kind of personal to me. Now, this may sound as if it's just for Georgia, but it's for the rest of America too, because this jump keeps happening repeatedly. South Fulton, Georgia, it's just another city giving its citizens the same old okey doke about its police department. Scandal? No problem. Namby-pamby Internal Affairs Bureau? No problem. What's the answer to transparency? We're not going to talk about it. Quote, we're not going to talk about it. We're moving forward, end quote, said its mayor. Right. And their public sucks up this garbage every single time. I saw it in Philadelphia, suffered for it, and was forced to leave the city for my own protection. Now, South Fulton, Georgia is doing the same thing. Are they protecting the whistleblowers? Absolutely not. Same crap. Its citizens embrace those smiling faces who are their buddies, their former schoolmates, their church members, or distant relatives, and nothing really changes. Come on, Four Tops. It's the same old song. Yep. A few years ago, former South Fulton Police Chief Keith Meadows, was a guest on this Issues and Answers program. I was so impressed with the many innovative programs he had established or would establish for South Fulton. Eventually, he would serve under a mayor who had serious character flaws, but that was the fault of the city and its failure to publicly expose issues that should have disqualified that mayoral candidate, but they didn't. So, but let's get back to the police department. I was so impressed by Chief Meadows that I sent him a copy of my autobiography. Now, my autobiography talks about ingrained corruption in a police department. It talks about how the Internal Affairs Bureau doesn't function the way that it should and plays favorites and sabotages certain investigations when some of the fair haired boys are being accused of doing wrong. And those people who tend to expose those fair haired boys are punished, ostracized, and sometimes fired. That's exactly what I faced. I wasn't fired. I wasn't fired because I documented every little thing that everybody did and everything everybody said. If you read my book, you'll find that to be true. And there's documentation that I have that's not even in the book because I'm waiting for others to challenge me about what's in that book. But nobody has. Could be. Nobody cares. Could be. But anyway, when I ran into Chief Meadows several months later, he told me that he read my book and was impressed by it. He even quoted certain portions of the book to me. I was deeply impressed. I offered that I would be happy to speak at any training function his department might have to discuss corruption and integrity. Now, it's revealed that there were several problems within this department. Whistleblowers, with whom I have great affinity, were punished and even removed from the job. This was the same nonsense I wrote about in my book. What happened? Here's what happened. I have sent my book to police departments all over the country at my own expense. Many of my books went to troubled departments such as Baltimore, Chicago, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, South Fulton, Georgia, and Atlanta. In each case, I was ignored. In each case, scandals arose, except for South Fulton. In each case, scandals arose dealing with corruption or abuse of authority by both line officers and commanders. Copies of my book have gone to Senator Raphael Warnock, Senator John Ossoff, Congressman Hank Johnson, Senator Mitch McConnell, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, among others. Only Senator John Ossoff and Congressman Hank Johnson ever responded with any acknowledgement and a thank you. In fact, I have talked to Senator Ossoff as recently as last year about my book. And Ossoff promised to continue to work for law reforms that protected whistleblowers. And that was me. Bottom line, when the mayor of South Fulton smilingly told the public, basically, nothing to see here, we are moving forward, that is a slap in the public's face. Chief Meadows was paid $200,000 to leave the department. It's basically a non-disclosure agreement. Why? I heard him today. Reporters asking him questions. Why was Chief Meadows let go and paid that amount of money? Well, that's talking about the past, and we're going to move on, and we don't need to talk about that. We're moving forward. We've learned things, and we're moving forward. That's the answer they're giving to the public, and they expect you to soak it up and smile and enjoy. Who is taking care of the whistleblowers who either lost their jobs or were punished for telling the truth? Nothing. But the suckers of South Fulton and other cities love those smiling faces who continually tell them that everything is okay while nothing really changes. If these civic leaders and federal legislators cared about reforms that would improve police departments, they would hold hearings and invite those such as I to speak. They would invite those such as I to speak to their departments and warn about the pitfalls of corruption, peer pressure to hide immoral and illegal behavior by coworkers, and the betrayal of public trust. But they won't. They won't, because changing a culture means changing relationships they have with corrupt figures in their communities, and change might loosen lips that have been previously tightly closed. So keep smiling. It works for you, Madam Mayor. Let's see what reforms you actually put into place to better the lives of your citizens in your police department. And it's not just her, it's departments all over the country. You never want to listen to people who say, who will tell your officers, you need to avoid this or you need to avoid that. That's because I experienced this and I experienced that. You don't want that. You really don't. So, ladies and gentlemen, history is happening every passing moment of every single day. Yet knowing and understanding past history is important. Just as you learn not to put your hand in fire You must also learn to avoid the traps that befell others before you. Understand how tyranny works. Understand that you don't need chains to enslave people. People can be enslaved by shackling them to philosophies that will keep them impoverished monetarily and psychically. Beware of the serpent in the garden. Beware of those smiling faces. Beware of those smiling faces. We come to an end of another broadcast of Issues and Answers. Next week, my next broadcast on the 23rd, I believe, I already have my special guest, Ms. Jessica Foray will be returning, and we're going to talk about a lot of hot issues that are going on in this country and in this state. And I hope you all will tune in with us for another exciting installment of Issues and Answers of the WCEG Network. It's always my pleasure to share time with you on these Monday afternoons, and let's do that again soon. Thank you so much for listening to WCEG Digital Media Enterprises and Issues and Answers with Norman A. Carter Jr. Peace out.